Welcome back, everyone. I'm here, and today I'm going to read from the series, Real Life Stories That Will Leave You Speechless. These are real stories from real people, and while names and identifying information has been changed, everything else is completely true. The series, My Daughter-in-Law Thought She Could Trick Me Out of My House. Imagine opening your front door, only to find your own daughter-in-law standing there with a lawyer, papers in hand, demanding you sign away the very home you built your life in. Most people would panic. But not me. She thought she could trick me out of my house, but what she didn't know is that I had a plan she'd never seen coming before. I tell you how I outsmarted her and turned the tables. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for more real-life stories that will leave you stunned. I'm a 68-year-old widow. This house isn't just walls and bricks to me. It's where I raised my children, where my late husband planted his garden, and where every family holiday was celebrated. It's my life's anchor. When my son got married, I welcomed his wife with open arms. At first, she was sweet, polite, and even helped me around the house. I thought I'd gained another daughter. But slowly, her mask started to slip. She began making little comments. This house is too big for just you. Or wouldn't it make sense for younger people to take over? At first, I brushed it off. But deep down, I felt a storm brewing. Then, one Saturday, she arrived at my doorstep, smiling like a snake, with a notary and documents. My son stood behind her, looking nervous. She told me, "Mum, it's time. Transfer the house into our name. You don't need all this space anymore." My heart sank. My own son, silent. My own daughter-in-law, trying to rob me in broad daylight. But instead of yelling, I calmly asked for time. "Let me think about it," I said. She smirked, thinking she had one. But what she didn't realize was I had already decided exactly how I'd handle her. That night, I pulled out my husband's old files and called our family lawyer. You see, years ago, my husband and I had prepared for moments just like this. The house was not only in my name, but also protected by a trust that specifically stated it could never be transferred without my full consent. But I didn't stop there. I invited my son and daughter-in-law over the next week for a family dinner. They thought I was finally giving in. But at dinner, I told them both I'd thought long and hard about their request. And I've decided the house will not be transferred. This is my home, and I intend to stay here as long as I can. Their faces fell, but I pressed on. However, I said, there is something I want to discuss. They looked up, a glimmer of hope returning. I want to give you both something. With that, I excused myself and went into the other room. I pulled out an envelope. Inside wasn't the house deed they expected. Instead, it was a legal notice stating that if they ever tried to coerce me into signing papers regarding the house again, I had grounds to cut my son out of the will entirely. I placed the envelope on the table and left the room. My daughter-in-law's face went pale. My son, he couldn't even look me in the eyes. I calmly told her, "This house is mine. It will remain mine. And if you think you can bully me into doing what you want, you've underestimated the woman who built this family." From that day on, she never brought up the house again. And I made sure of one more thing. I changed my will so that if anyone tried to force my hand, their share is gone forever. A peaceful shot of an older woman tending a garden outside her house. I learnt something important. Family can sometimes be the first to betray you, but staying calm, prepared, and smart is far more powerful than anger. My home remains mine, my dignity remains intact, and my daughter-in-law, she now knows I'm not a woman to be underestimated. Now, here's a story that shows the power of being cautious when buying a car. A man shared how his neighbor tricked him into buying a damaged car, but he ended up turning the tables. In the end, if you think you're having a bad day, wait until you hear this next story. A man bought his dream car. He parked it in his driveway overnight, and in the morning he found someone had keyed all over it. But check out how he took his revenge. Welcome back. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. These are real stories from real people. And while names and identifying information has been changed, everything else is completely true. The series, My Neighbor Thought He Could Key My Car and Get Away With It. If you've ever made the mistake of trusting the wrong person, then you know how quickly it can happen. One moment you're feeling on top of the world, and the next you're staring at the cold, hard facts of betrayal. For example, after buying his dream car, one guy soon learned how fast trust can evaporate when his neighbor keyed all over it. I am a 34-year-old guy who worked hard for years to finally save enough to buy his dream car. A 2017 Ford Mustang GT. I couldn't believe it when I finally drove it home. The sleek black paint job gleamed in the sun, and the engine purred like a hungry panther ready to pounce. I proudly parked it in my driveway and headed inside for bed. As I lay in bed that night, I could still hear the echo of my Mustang's engine roaring in my ears. Oh, that beautiful sound. Just as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard a loud commotion outside. I sat up in bed, wondering what could possibly be happening at this hour. Then I remembered the 2 spots of parking right in front of my driveway were still empty. Those belonged to my noisy neighbors, the Millers. They always seemed to come home late, blasting music and causing trouble. I assumed it was just them being them and went back to sleep. In the morning, though, the noise had stopped. So I slipped out the back door, intending to go for a quick run before work and check out my Mustang, and that's when I saw it. Scratched across the entire side of my brand new car was a long, deep gash. And no, it wasn't just a random act of vandalism. Someone had deliberately keyed it. Looking closer, I saw that the scratches spelled out, "Get a life, nerd." It was the signature of my neighbor, Mark Miller. Mark was a 39-year-old loser who still lived with his parents. To say he was jealous of my car was an understatement. We'd had numerous fights over the smallest things. He constantly criticized my appearance, calling me names like nerd and loser, just because he couldn't accept that I was better off than him. Now he'd crossed the line. This was no longer about simple annoyance or petty rivalry. This was outright malice, pure and simple. While I was fuming, I knew I couldn't just rush out there and confront him. I needed a plan, a way to strike back that would teach him a lesson he wouldn't forget. But what could I possibly do? Then it hit me. I had the perfect idea. It might seem small-minded, but trust me, it was brilliant. First, I carefully took photos of the damage to my car. I filed a police report and made sure to include the details about Mark's behavior. Then I posted the pictures on social media, calling out Mark for his actions. I wanted everyone in town to know what he was capable of. As the hours passed, my anger grew along with the reach of my post. Mark had just dug his own grave. His reputation was about to get a serious makeover. Within days, his whole world had imploded. People he barely knew reached out to him to express their disappointment. His boss called him in for an emergency meeting and his own friends kept their distance. But that was just the beginning. Here's where my plan truly took shape. I reached out to a few local auto detailers and mechanics. I explained what had happened to my car and asked if they could help me out, and they did. Every single one of them offered to fix my car for free. The body shop owner even threw in a free paint job. But that still wasn't enough. Just before the repairs, I took one last look at the damage. Using a marker, I drew thick lines around each scratch, making them stand out as much as possible. I wanted to make sure Mark understood exactly what he had done. Then I dropped my car off and waited for its rebirth. A week later, my car was returned to me, gleaming and shining like new. Not only had the damage been fixed, but the whole thing had become a community project. Everyone had pitched in to make sure I got the best service possible. And Mark, well, he became a pariah in town. The scandal surrounding him just grew and grew until he eventually moved away. So remember, if you mess with one person, you might just mess with the whole community. Here's another story that will make you rethink twice before messing with someone else's property. A guy decided to prank his neighbor by covering their expensive sports car with plastic wrap. But he hadn't counted on his neighbor's response. And it was genius. Check it out. Annoyed.